What do you do when your faith system no longer fits? Because sometimes you outgrow it. Sometimes you graduate, you ascend, you leave the old, itchy, worn-out way, and you begin to walk in the new. Sometimes you grow. Join the conversation with me, Tony Werfel, author, speaker, teaching pastor, as we help unwrap and rebuild a faith that no longer fits. We learn to walk into the new, messy journey called life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's been a crazy week, and I will be sharing a lot more with you at some point in time. Today, I'll share a little bit of kind of what's going on with me in my life, but I think, man, it's crazy how when you begin reading certain things and you watch certain things, movies or whatever, they all seem to kind of line up to the place where you're at, and they seem to kind of fit. And so, as I've been kind of going through this story of the Exodus, many things have just been lining up in my life, almost too coincidental. And so, I want to share with you the Exodus in chapter 7, and some really interesting concepts have been coming up for me. There's some validation, there's some aha moments that I've had, and so I'm just going to share with you some ideas from it and see where it goes. So again, this is an epic narrative. And in the Exodus, it's really about something powerful going on, about a group of people who have woke up. One of my friends, she wrote me this really nice letter, really short little message, and she said, "You're one of the few pastors that is woke." And I thought, oh, that's so nice to hear, because yeah, there's a moment in all of our lives, these different moments actually, where we have an awakening, a moment of wokeness, right? And so for Israel, they have an awakening, a moment of realization, of change. And so what you see all throughout this narrative is they're constantly walking in a new awakening. And so Exodus 7, we have these crazy plagues. And as a kid, I remember reading these and thinking, man, like, God must be angry. And we think about it like, yeah, a God that would put that much energy into making his enemies miserable, eventually murdering these people's firstborn, that's pretty hard to swallow. And to go that direction, I'm going to be honest with you, when you begin literalizing all of this and begin those kind of questions, it actually, you lose the point of the narrative. And so the plagues, they're not written as historical fact. That wasn't the point, whether some of these things did or didn't happen, not the point, not an interesting argument. It was written to show a comparison between one way of living and another way of living. And so one way is validated with life, while the other is shown not to measure up. So this was the idea, the theme of the plagues. Not Israel's God getting revenge, but two very different approaches to what brings life. And so if you are an Egyptian or an Israelite, especially living during this time period, so much of this story of the plagues it's going to resonate with you in ways that we, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years later, wouldn't pick up. And so what's going on is they're going to compare their gods with Egypt's gods. And again, this is what ancient cultures did. When you went to war with someone, it was your God going to war with their God. Which God is going to win? And there's actually an even deeper truth that's kind of hiding under the surface here. And the deeper truth of this story is this: if you choose to stay in that place that is causing so much pain and death, look at the outcome. There's more death. There's more brokenness. There's more decay. And so if you don't begin walking in a new wisdom and a new direction in this new awakening, you're actually going to begin going backwards. You'll begin to suffer until there's nothing left of your soul. And so let me show you, again, going through these different plagues, what you're going to see is every one of these plagues is actually Israel saying, our God, our way of life is better than yours. That's the point. So when you look at like Exodus 7:14 through 25, the first one is this plague of the river, of the water, and it's actually an attack on their god Hapi, the god of the Nile. And please understand, like, the first plague is given to the Egyptians, from God or whatever, and it's turning water into blood. And so get this, every empire, the first thing they need to really create to create their empire is water. They need water because water is going to help them, again, sustain life. And so the very beginning is saying, like, the things that are sustaining life, the very powerful things, all of this, it doesn't sustain you. Even those things, they begin to fall apart from the very beginning. And so really interesting. And also get this, what you see here is this idea. Egypt is, again, drinking from the wrong water. It's unsuitable for drinking. And so I think you'll kind of pick this up. The waters you're drinking from are no longer quenching your thirst. So you have this reference. So the first plague is, again, water. The rivers dry up. And then you get to this next one. The next one is you get this next plague of frogs. And what's really interesting, the god that's referring to is Heket. Heket, I don't know how exactly to pronounce these Egyptian gods, but this was the goddess of fertility. And of course, Heket had a frog head. So please understand, again, when the Egyptians are reading this, they immediately are going to make connections to, got it, Heket, the god of frogs. What are they trying to say here? Fertility, water, renewal. Get it? So again, Pharaoh refuses to let Israel go, and so the frogs, they come up from the river, and again, they begin infesting everything, and you have this really interesting moment where everything is kind of overrun with frogs. And so please get this, the overabundance becomes a curse. Again, Heket, the god of fertility, of growth, renewal, the things of abundance, they become a curse. And think about that for a minute. In our culture today, we need more. And I think so many of us fall into this trap. We have to have more. But at some point in time, more actually becomes a curse. The overabundance of all this stuff, the need to have more, the need to have the next iPhone, whatever it is, that need, eventually, when you drink from that and you think that's going to give you life, it actually brings you closer to death. And so you have this god, Heket, and it's actually a curse. So then, the next one that you come to is you get this one where with the ground, all the gnats and everything come out. And so again, interestingly enough, the god Geb, he is the god of earth, and he's got this face that looks like a kind of insecty, and he's the god of the ground, the earth. And so another interesting concept here. So again, on the surface, this God against this God, Israel's God wins. But then look at the deeper picture. Deeper picture is this. The ground on which you depend, it becomes a curse. So all of the hard work you're doing, so many of us, we fall into this trap that I am defined by the things I do. And so I'm a lawyer, I'm a pastor, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. When that becomes your identity and you lose that thing, it actually has the potential to ruin you. And here's the crazy thing. I had this title, pastor, for quite a while. And that title, I no longer have it. I am no longer a pastor of this community that I help build and grow. It's no longer my title. And I have been going back and forth all week long trying to figure out, who am I now? Because when your identity is wrapped up in the things you do, it could actually bring you to some really painful realizations. Because if you are only the thing you do, what happens when you lose that thing? And so the deeper point here is that the things that we oftentimes depend on, the work that we do, those, when we allow those to define us and they're taken away, sometimes we're not left with much if that's what we have defined ourselves by. So, going on. The next plague, you see flies everywhere. Chapter 8, 20 through 32, I think. The flies. So this god, and again, every single one of these gods comes into the picture. And so you have flies inhabiting everywhere. And so this god, Khepri, is the god of creation, movement of the sun, rebirth. The god's head, big surprise, is one of a fly. Yeah, he's actually got a fly's head. And so, get this. When you stay in the thing that's broken, when you stay in the relationship that's not working, when you stay somewhere and there's abuse and there's certain things that just aren't fitting, not only do you suffer, but other things begin to suffer as well. And I think so many of you, you're like nodding your head right now, because so many of us, we stayed in certain things that were painful. And we stayed and our health suffered, our relationships suffered, certain things began to fall apart because it doesn't just affect you, it affects everything around you. Every space you inhabit suffers. And so Israel, leave the old behind. And to you and me, when certain things don't work, when certain people have made it very apparent that you just don't fit anymore, when those things happen and you don't choose to walk in the new thing, every space you inhabit begins to suffer. Moving along, Exodus 9, you begin to have the livestock affected. So the cattle and all this, they begin to die. And so you begin to lose your very livelihood. And by the way, the goddess of this is Hathor, who has, of course, the head of a cat of a cow, the goddess of love, protection, these concepts. So again, when you stay, it affects your livelihood. The things that you once thought would protect you, keep you safe, you begin to lose those things too. And again, the things that you love, they actually begin to be a curse to you. The things that you worked hard for, they actually begin to hurt you. You get it? Really fascinating. Moving. Next one is the boils. And again, the goddess here, the goddess of medicine and peace, people are being physically affected. There's this, their health is being affected here. And again, if your health is being affected as an Egyptian, that means you better start praying a little harder to the god of Isis, because this goddess was the goddess of medicine and peace. And so if your health began to suffer, this is who you prayed to. However, it looks like from the story, Israel's God is stronger than that God. But on the deeper surface, we understand something bigger. The things that once brought you healing, they begin to fail. And I don't know how many of you have ever watched some of those drug advertisements, where there's this happy couple running along the beach and they're like looking at each other, and they're in love. And in the background, you have this deep voice that's like, yes, Abersil. Side effects may include nausea, vomiting, death. You're like, wait, what? Because that's what this is saying. When you stay in the thing and it doesn't work, the things that you used to find healing in and joy in, the things that used to heal your soul, are actually now the things that are bringing you that much closer to death. Come on. Next one is hail. We're told hail falls from the earth and it just begins destroying everything. And so again, from the sky, there are curses sent down. And so any Egyptian, the goddess Nut, the goddess of the sky, again, this was one of the higher goddesses that were worshipped. And so you look up, your worship, it goes up for these ancient people. And the idols you pray to up there, they actually begin to curse you. They begin to fail you. Think about all of the idols that you've made. And for some of us, it's a person, it's a concept, it's a building, it's your job, it's certain things that you've worshipped. And I don't know how many of you have had this happen, but certain people in your life that you've idolized. In these moments of awakening where change takes place, ask yourself, where are those people? Are they around? Have they been there to help you? Because sometimes you'll find they're nowhere to be found. Sometimes you'll find that the things you worshipped, the stuff that you held up so high, actually begins to be a curse to you, because in those moments of your brokenness and your change and transition, sometimes those things will fail you. And that's not always easy to swallow. Israel, it's time to walk in the new. Another one, we have the idea of locusts that come down and they begin to devour everything. Every time locusts come into the picture, the idea is locusts would devour everything. Everything's going to be taken. And this God was the god Seth, the god of storms, disasters. And again, there's many stories of this God sending locusts. So you can kind of get the picture here for these people. And again, this God, what his face kind of looks like is one of a locust. You kind of get the picture. But here's the deeper picture for me. In these moments, when you're struggling with the transition, every once in a while you will get kicked while you're down. And it's so funny to me, the day of when I was after I gave my last sermon this past weekend, I had so many people come to me and just say, "Oh, we love you. How can we support you?" So many people. And then I get this one text from just the guy's a terrible person. He's just a terrible person. I'm going to say it. And he sends me, and I've actually blocked his phone number, and I have no idea how it came up, but I just saw a little bit of it, how the text message will pop up and you'll be able to read a little bit. And the dude was just like, "So happy you finally got, made the right decision. Bravo." And really condescending garbage. And I remember reading that, just thinking, what a tool. Like, who does that to someone? But here's the thing, there will be terrible people that while in the middle of your transition, change, brokenness, in the middle of these moments, if you choose not to walk in the new, you get kicked while you're down. And it just happens. And so what I'm learning to do is say, you know what, all these other positive things, I know it's so easy to focus on the negative. I get it, and that's where my head goes to. But there's so much goodness all around you, and there's so many positive things. Don't let that person trying to kick you while you're down, don't let them affect your journey. You can rise above it. Those people, they are in their own sickness, and the reason they're reaching out and trying to kick you while you're down is because they're actually really unhealthy. And so understanding that, you can move past it. The next thing that happens is the sky, everything goes dark. And so this was, again, the god Ra, the sun god, one of the most powerful of the gods, Ra. And please get this, for the Israelites, their God, their way of life is to bring light to the darkness. It's to bring order and meaning to the chaos. However, everything's kind of going backwards, right? It's destruction rather than creation. And so the very world begins to fall back into chaos. And again, all of us understand this. When you're about to step into the new thing, most of the time, plan C and D and G and Z, they aren't in place. And it is terrifying and it is chaotic. And you're wandering around sometimes just wondering, what's next? What do I do? These are the moments. And if you stay in the thing and it doesn't work anymore, it's going to get darker and darker and darker for you, and I can tell you from experience. The last one is that the firstborn, Exodus 11, the firstborn, they're murdered. And again, for Egypt, this would have been one of the biggest attacks, because for them, the Pharaoh, is the ultimate sign of power. His title was the firstborn of Egypt. Do you guys see what I'm saying here? The ultimate sign of power. Life actually ceases to be lived. And so you stay in that thing too long, and the very life, the very breath you have, it begins to be a curse to you. And how painful is that? Life, all goodness is just almost zapped out of you when you stay in the broken relationship. It doesn't bring life anymore. You have to step out. And so for Israel, this story, again, it had deep meaning. We often read it again as historical, yet we miss the deeper message here that was being written. For the people reading this, it's hugely political, religious, it's psychological. There's so many elements to this. And so, again, whatever place you're in, if the thing is not working for you, if you're feeling like, man, I just don't know how I can last another day with this person as my boss. I don't feel like I can last another day with all of this terrible stuff going on. Or maybe I don't, I have this new awareness of a new kind of reality, and this thing doesn't fit anymore. It's time to walk away. And it will be the most courageous thing you've done, and yet it will be the most terrifying thing you've ever done. And so again, this week, I had to say goodbye to a community I helped build, to people I love. And it was the most painful thing, one of the most painful things I've ever done. And I've been in the middle of grieving, sadness, depression, anxiety. I've had people call, text, email, all asking why. And again, in a couple weeks, I'll delve into some of that. But for now, I'll say this. In this place, the place I was in, the situation I find myself in, it just didn't work anymore. And I had to step out. And all of the questions arose, all the uncertainty, so much uncertainty. But the truth is, for so many of us, sometimes we get that it's time. And the most courageous action you can do is to step forward into the uncertainty. Don't ignore it anymore. Step into the uncertainty, even though it's terrifying. So terrifying. And so for me, in the middle of all of this, there's some steps I'm going to keep attempting to do. Again, for me, I'm going to keep asking the questions. I'm going to ask honestly of myself certain things. I'm going to open my eyes and see all of the different cycles and things that keep working in my life, and just be open to it. And often, like in recovery, the next steps are you get the piece of paper out, you list your strengths, your weaknesses, you begin to see yourself. You also begin to see some of the lies you've told yourself. For me, I was told over and over again by certain systems that I don't belong. This was a cycle I fell into over and over and over again. You don't belong. You're not good enough. I've heard those things over and over again. In the last year, what I've begun to understand is those things came from people who were threatened, that did not understand who I was or what I was saying. And I began to understand those were their issues, not mine. I can find belonging and create community everywhere I go. But sometimes you have to confront the lies, and that's something I will work through and continue working through as I step into the new. Begin to look at what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, learning to act honestly. And the other thing, when you step out into the new thing, and again, I'm talking like I'm an extrovert, but it's only been a couple days, but these are the things I'm resolved to do. As I step into this new thing, what I'm going to continue doing is find ways to create new community. Find people, and again, I have many of my friends from that group, but also finding new people, meeting new individuals who have those same stories. And when you do this, you begin walking in something bigger. You understand your story is not just this little micro thing. It's actually part of a larger story. And when you do that, man, there's just so much life. I have had so many people reach out to me who've had the same story. I'd never met these people before, but they just reached out and said, man, let me tell you about my story. And as I hear their stories of awakening and movement and change and walking in the new, I've begun to understand I too can walk in this thing. And I too can be courageous. And life isn't actually over. Maybe in some ways it's just beginning. So, as you walk in the new thing, as you courageously move away from relationships, jobs, various things that don't work anymore, my hope is that you too will step out courageously. Don't stay in the thing that doesn't work anymore because it's going to kill you. It's going to hurt your soul. Don't stay there. Step out and understand the new journey is about to begin. Blessings today, everyone. Can't wait to talk to you next week. And yes, I promise I will spend some time in the next couple weeks talking about kind of what's going on, what's happened, where I'm going now. And please, as always, obviously, I'm going to need some help in some ways. Patreon would be a great way to help support me. And so if you go to my Patreon page, again, Patreon.com/Tony Werfel, you can help support me in that way. I'm also going to begin working with a nonprofit at some point soon too. But please, if you find this compelling or helpful or interesting, listen to it and then help with a one-time donation or even a monthly one. Anything helps. I've got people donating $10 a month. And I can tell you just that affirmation and that help has been wonderful. Anyways, blessings again, everyone, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.